Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
Aki, hello, and welcome to you out there to Set Phasers.
A highly illogical Star Trek podcast. Which
Indeed.
we are doing. Yes. Oh, wait, hold on. In the face of, Yeah.
I'm not-
We're going to do that for the next 20 minutes?
I don't know yet.
Don't you Vulcan salute me sarcastically. Okay. All right. Well, hey, listen. It's today. And, our hearts are heavy.
Our hearts are heavy.
Right. I feel like
I
we
have
should...
not.
Well, we should start the episode out by keeping it real before we jump 200 years into the future. And,
Let's do that.
Yes. Well, news has just come down the wire that Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has passed at the age of, I believe it was 87. And so that leaves a vacancy on our highest court in the land, and also giant shoes to fill for whomever should fill that position. And it also is probably one of the strongest calls to action that we as a generation will have in this time, at this turning point in American history. So I know that it may bring a little despair and despondency into the weekend, but nonetheless, I think the spirit of RBG is to every day be hustling, as she did. And so hopefully we can take that with us in our own struggle to secure freedom and equality in America and across the world. I don't know why I'm running for something. My apologies.
Not at all.
Okay.
That was a beautiful tribute, Aki. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we debated just before going to air whether or not to do that over Faith of the Heart or not, and I think it was the right call to do it soberly. Although, the notorious RBG, utmost respect. So, moving on.
Yep.
It is
Going 200 years into the future.
Yes, to the Stardate 20918.6, where we shall be discussing Season 2, Episodes 3 and 4 of Star Trek Discovery. And strap in tight, because things are about to get quite bumpy. Without further ado, perhaps we should run it down.
Run it down.
It's time to run it down. Can you run it down for me? What just happened? Can you run it down for me? Yes, we can run it down for you. You know what I forgot to mention in the cold open?
What's that?
The sweet, sweet mug that arrived in the mail for me. I was like, where did this come? Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast mug. I'm drinking my coffee out of it. And
Oh, yeah.
I feel very futuristic, very optimistic, and very
Do you?
driven. Yeah,
We feel official now, don't we? We have our mugs.
we sure do. We're drinking out of our mugs, and I love the taste of coffee in the Stardate 20918.6 morning. All right. Season 2, Episode 3 of Star Trek Discovery is called Point of Light. And I did put a note on my chart, Nota Bene, the previously on Discovery. Yeah, that's right. I went to public school. Nota Bene, the previously on Discovery segment is stated by Laurel in Klingon. So instead of saying previously on Discovery, it says like
Yes.
blah, 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 Discovery, which is cool. I was like, is this going to be a Klingon episode? And it show is. All right, so we begin with
My neighbour has moved back in, and he's an elephant.
Oh,
He is not light on his feet.
you know what? The delivery on that joke was...
Wasn't even a joke.
It sounded like a Borscht Belt 1930s joke. My neighbor's moved back in, and he's an elephant. That was great.
Dumbo.
Well,
That's his name.
Dumbo.
Yep.
My neighbor Dumbo's moved back in. And boy, are his ears tired. All right, so... yeah, that's right. I give as good as I get.
You sure do.
We're going to say... it begins with Michael giving her own star date, 1029.46. This is a star date, and they're still sort of working out what's going on with these 7 red signals that make no sense. They're trying to figure out what they are and how Spock could have seen them before they appeared in the night sky. And as she's wondering about this, she walks out into the hallway, boom, into a trainee half marathon. And it's all the trainees in the command training program doing a half marathon. Tilly is among them. She is still being plagued by this May Ahearn character, who is a friend of hers who died several years ago. And so it's a figment of her imagination. She actually literally runs through this May Ahearn, and only Tilly can see her. And she's worried that she's mentally unfit. And so she runs away from the specter of May and actually wins the race, which Saru is running. Saru is running the command training program aboard the Discovery, which I thought was sweet. We get our only alert of the 2 episodes, a yellow alert at this moment. There's an unidentified craft. Boom, we go to the bridge. Pike calls Owashekun Owo, which I thought was cute. And they don't know what the ship is, and they're not answering the hails, but they have a diplomatic registry number, and as they are able to get visual ID on it, it is Sarek's ship. So they think, oh, it must be Sarek, who left to go work with the Vulcan High Command on starting a task force to figure out what's going on with these red things in the sky. And so there's a little bit of hemming and hawing between Michael and Pike, because Pike has now alerted Starfleet to the fact that Spock had checked himself into a psychiatric unit. He'd been keeping it secret from everyone, including Spock's parents and family. But Pike says, hey, look, we got to do what we got to do. He sends Michael down to the transporter room. This diplomat beams in. It should be Sarek, but 'tis not Sarek. 'Tis Amanda, Michael's foster mother. And so Amanda, Sarek's wife, shows up. She hugs Michael, and she's like, do not react. You're Spock's only hope. You must help him. And boom, we go to credits. So I still have no idea what's going on in this episode at this point, but it's pretty exciting. When we return, finally, that Klingon business from the very, very beginning makes some sense, because we are on Kronos with Laurel, and she's speaking to the assembled great houses, great families of Kronos, and they're talking, and they're showing the new ship that the Klingon Empire will be using for all their forces. The quote D7 looks a lot like a bird of prey to me. Mm-hmm. And yes, the Klingons all have hair. Everybody got hair, including and most notably, and might I add, sexily, Ash Tyler got a sweet ponytail, sweet beard. He is looking, I don't know, maybe everyone doesn't agree, but I'm thinking he's looking good. He looking good on Kronos. That's my feeling about Ash Tyler.
Fair enough.
All right, fine. Well, listen.
I mean, a lot of facial hair doesn't do it for me.
Doesn't float everyone's boat, but
sure.
he looked sculpted. You know what I'm saying? The face looks sculpted. Okay, I won't dwell on this. Anyway, there appears to be...
You might have a crush on Ash Tyler.
Well, he looks better than he's ever looked before, in my opinion. I just think he's good. He let the hair grow out, and it was a good look. That's all I'm saying. And later on, Michael agrees with me. And what? So... there is a little bit of tension, though, amongst the High families, because remember Cole, who was the one who, with the red paint on his face, who tricked both Laurel and Voke into letting him on the ship, and then he paid their men in food to betray them, and then did the whole thing. It was all jacked up, and he wound up taking over the Klingons, but then turning them into this internecine war. Anyway, he died, and his father is not happy about it. Volsha, I believe is his name. Oh, Kolsha. He's the father of Cole. Yes, so the head of the Cole house. And he's like, hey, what's up with this human? We don't dig this human around here. He's gross. You're going to have him telling us what to do, and we're going to have to start speaking in Federation languages, and then there's a whole beef. And then Laurel's like, you should take that paint off your face because we're no longer different houses. We're one empire. And he's like, you take it off my face. And then Tyler, beautifully sculpted Tyler, steps in. He's like, oh, yeah, she's the chancellor. She doesn't get her hands dirty. That's what I do. I'm the torchbearer. And he gets him in his face, and he wipes some of the paint off. And he's like, yeah, take that. So anyway, things are a little rough in the Klingon Empire. Meanwhile, back on Discovery, Amanda is telling Michael that she heard about Spock. She went to Starbase 5 to try and see Spock, which is where he had checked into the psychiatric unit, and they wouldn't let her see Spock. They wouldn't let him take his personal effects. They wouldn't let her see the files. Essentially, all these things that you should be allowed to do as a family member of the person who's in the center. And so Amanda stole Spock's medical file, and she asked Michael to unencrypt it, which leads to some tough. Well, Michael, remember how she went to jail for breaking the rules? So I don't know how she feels about that. Back on the Klingon world, there's more of like Klingons not digging Tyler, including the uncle of Laurel, who he thinks should at least acknowledge his presence. And Laurel sort of makes like a come on to him. She's like, if you really want to fit in here, you should love me the way Volk did. And he's like, oh, when you touch me, it feels like sort of like an abomination or violation. And she gets upset and she storms out of the room. So all is not well within the nest either on Klingon. Back on Disco, Pike is sort of, he's not refusing, but he's saying like he's not going to help open this file. So Michael and Amanda have gone to Pike and they said, we want to do this thing, but Michael seems unwilling to do it without letting her captain know. And so Pike says, you know what, let me call ahead to Starbase 5. And he talks to Diego Vela, who's like a friend of his and who runs the Starbase. And he's like, hey, tell me what's going on with Spock. And Vela's like, oh, I can't tell you. It's classified. And he's like, oh, you should be able to tell me. I'm the captain. What's going on with Spock? And he says, well, listen, here's the deal. Your man is a wanted man because Spock apparently killed 3 doctors and escaped Starbase 5. Spock did this. Spock.
Was that our Kirk impression?
That was sort of my Kirk impression. We're on the same page.
We are. Always.
That's true. It's true. Hold on, let me sip from my Set Phasers mug.
Tastes good, doesn't it?
It tastes as good as it looks. All right. So that being what it is, they all suspect some sort of weird foul play or some sort of cover-up. And so Pike gives the file to Michael and says, hey, break into this and figure it out. As Michael is breaking into the file, they see she and Amanda have a discussion sort of about Spock, and Amanda reveals that Spock had dreamed of this Red Angel years ago, the same Red Angel. He's the one who called it the Red Angel. And he dreamed it the first time the night, apparently, that Michael ran away from the house. Michael, who had been attacked by the Vulcan, the logic extremists. And she ran away, and no one could find her, and they were all starting to think they should contact High Command. And then Spock came in and said he had a dream, and a Red Angel told him where to find Michael, and they went, and they found her there. And Amanda and Sarek had always written this off as some sort of logic that Spock must have had more information or data and known where Michael was. But Spock always claimed that it was the Red Angel who had come to him and given him this information. He also has all these drawings that look like the Red Angel that also Michael saw when she was down on that weird dark matter asteroid. So it's a little strange. But they also discover that Spock's diagnosis is that he has a extreme empathy deficit, aka psychopathy. And so they're sort of trying to figure out, did Spock actually kill those people, or are they saying that he killed those people, or what is the deal there? And as they're sort of talking about this, Michael gets a call, and she has to go take it, and it's from, guess who? Sexy Tyler. And Tyler's telling her, like, hey, I had to contact you. I just wanted to let you know how volatile things are on the Klingon world so you can pass it up the chain, the Federation. She says she likes the beard. All right, whatever. and that the Klingons are growing their hair because the war is over. And then they sort of share their stories of how their various difficulties are going. And there's a nice awkward moment where they're like, I'm here. You look good, et cetera, et cetera. Tyler's thinking about leaving, and Michael encourages him to stay because she thinks L'Rell has faith in him. Meanwhile, many children walk past my window.
I mean,
they are overjoyed.
Is it time for a walk your kids moment?
Wait, what does that mean?
Like, because I live near a school and they just walk the kids, like, and they have them in, like, duck lines.
Possibly. It's 8 in the evening, but it was 8
Sounds
in
like
the
many
evening.
children.
Mm-hmm. It sounded like many children, but it is Friday night, and the mood is right. Okay, where was I? So, meanwhile, the command training program trainees are on the bridge, and they're getting to do shadow exercises where they shadow some member of the senior staff on the bridge, and Tilly gets Pike, which is great. And Pike is telling her, hey, jump in the chair and let's do some captainy stuff. But Tilly's being very much distracted by May. The May that only she can see is very upset about Pike because he does not look like the, quote, captain that she's looking for. She said it should be meaner and so on and so forth. May starts acting out. Tilly's trying to keep it cool, but she is not able to keep it cool and eventually explodes at May and tells her to shut up, which they all think she was saying to Pike. And then Tilly sort of stammers and backs up, and then she says she quits and leaves, assuming quitting the command training program. Back on Kronos, Tyler notices some shadowy figures who are watching him. He trails them back, and he finds out that he is being watched by L'Rell's uncle. And he threatens him, and he says, hey, what are you watching me for? What secrets are you keeping? And L'Rell's uncle's like, I have a secret, but I'm not supposed to tell you. But you know what? I'll let you know. And so they let him into a room in which I thought there was a throne. 'Twas not a throne. 'Twas a crib. And in crib, 'twas a baby. A baby. Yeah, that's right. The baby had the same skin. I don't want to call it an affliction but it was an albino baby. So it was like Volk. And apparently this is a baby that L'Rell had and it kept in secret from Volk and from Tyler. And
Yeah,
was
she
being
said
watched
it
by her
like
uncle.
was like ex utero or something.
She found out that she was pregnant apparently right before Volk went into the human bone breaking whatever process. And she knew that they couldn't activate and do all the stuff and have their Manchurian candidate thing work out if she was pregnant. So she had the baby removed and it gestated ex utero. She had never met it. She's never met it. Her uncle has been looking after it this entire time. L'Rell, Tyler sort of says like when he saw the child, he felt both halves of him finally met in a union, and he sort of pledges that he will be a father to the child, and that the relationship between him and L'Rell, he says the rest will come, and they hold hands.
Because prior to that, I think he'd said, when she touched him, he felt violated.
Yes.
And then suddenly he saw this child and he was like, oh, yes, this is right. And I'm committed to you and we will do this together.
Well, it's sort of like I know we're not in love now, but we need to take care of this child. And therefore I will stay here and help raise him. And the love will come because of the child. It's basically the promise he's making. Back on Disco, we have Michael sort of is still talking with Amanda, and she explains that the psychopathy that Amanda is worried about, she thinks that because when he saw the Red Angel after that vision, he became withdrawn and started to lose his empathic side, and that because Sarek wanted him raised as a Klingon, she had withdrawn her human emotion from Spock and had sort of showered that down on Michael. Michael says, well, that's not why Spock became withdrawn, because she says after she was attacked by the extremists, she felt that she had to protect Spock. You can hear that, right? Yes. After she was attacked by the extremists, she felt that she had to protect Spock by keeping him away, and so she had to, quote, wound him enough that he wouldn't follow her around, because heretofore he had been her shadow, so to speak. And when Amanda says, what did you do? Michael can't even speak to it. And in the end, they sort of decide that they're both going to try to save Spock, but Amanda actually takes the chip and she's like, I'll save him. And she, I guess, just leaves, gets on a ship, and gets out of there. When Michael, who's sort of dealing with this, is crying alone in her room, Tilly walks in from her weird episode, and Michael's like, hey, give me a problem I can fix. And so Tilly kind of opens up to Michael about having been hit in the head by the dark matter substance and seeing the Ahearn all around, and May is there talking to her as that happens, and Tilly is crying because she feels like she's going to get kicked out of the command training program, and she lost it, and she doesn't know what's going on with her mind, and she's so worried, and she doesn't want to go to sick bay. And that's when May says, well, there's water coming from your eyes, and Tilly speaks to her and says, it's crying, it's what people do when they're sad. And then May says, I'm going to come back and talk to you, sense into you later. And a despondent Tilly is cheered up by Michael saying, well, if she doesn't know what crying is, it's not a figment of your imagination, because you know this May Ahearn. If it was a vision or like a hallucination of someone that you knew, they would know what crying is, meaning that it must be something else. And she deduces through logic that when she held the piece of the rock, there was no reaction to her, but there was a reaction when it touched Tilly, and therefore it's a spore reaction. And Michael says, you don't need sickbay. You need Stamets. Oh, yeah. So, back on Kronos, this is a pretty exciting moment. It's kind of like the thing that happens here. Tyler and Laurel are going to go see the baby together, and they're like cementing their union. And as they go to the chamber, they open the door, and who should be strung up, bleeding, and dead but Laurel's uncle, and the baby is gone. And they gasp, dun dun dun. It's a shocker. And they turn around, and there's a holograph of old Kolsha, and he's holding the baby, and he's like, hey, this baby, he looks pretty good, but I thought he could use some paint on his face. And he like painted the baby's face or whatever, and he's like, hey, here's the deal. I don't like Tyler, and he's gross, and I also don't like you, and here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you this baby if you sign over control of the Empire to me. You will meet me at your mansion, and we will sign over the paperwork, and then I'll give you your baby, and you get out of here. So it's a kind of like exploitation. When they do go to make the trade, the baby is being held back, and surprise, surprise, they're Klingons. It turns into an all-out brawl because it's like they're going to, everyone's going to kill each other anyway. So Laurel and Tyler do the old back-to-back, and they start whooping butt.
And it's a good fight scene.
It's a great fight scene. There's like, Laurel's doing it with her bat'leth, and Tyler's got the daggers, and they're fighting, and they kind of kill the last henchman, but they have left Kolsha alive, and he shows up holding a weird instrument that looks like a sort of, I don't know, baton.
Do you not think it looks like something out of a 1980s cartoon?
Yes,
it did sort of look like He-Man-esque.
It looked He-Man-esque, or like one of those a shake weight. I don't know. And he's like, well, and then when they think like, okay, they're gonna converge on him and kill him and get the baby, that's when more recruits, like his backup shows up, and there's more people now. They're surrounded, and he uses the thing in between them, boom, and it sends out this like flare, and they're being paralyzed. And as they're being paralyzed, he says, yes, it will spread to your lungs, and your heart will stop, but before we do that, you're going to sign over this empire to me. And he uses his dagger to take some blood from Tyler as ink, and he puts it on Laurel's finger and has her touch the pad, and he's like, ah, ha, 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 I did it. What's that?
No, I was just like doing the finger pad thing.
Oh, yeah.
I almost thought it was like an old iPad or an iPhone kind of move.
Yeah,
where he like stole her thumb.
Yeah. We kept the papers for the Empire on this iPad, this iPhone 4, and we need your thumbprint. Take those gloves off. And he's like, now my first act as Chancellor will be an execution. He's like, get ready to watch your Voke die forever. Just as that happens, the room starts to shake. They look to see. There's some weird light that shows up. A hooded assassin arrives with some sort of like pet drone. And boom, 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 boom. Everyone is killed. Voke is put, not Voke, Kolsha is put into like a weird stasis blob
thing.
Yeah. He's held up in the air, and then the figure grabs the weird He-Man thing, and it unparalyzes them, and their immediate reaction is to then both go and kill Kolsha and rip his entrails out. And then the figure reveals who it is, and it is... Hit me with the dun-dun-dun.
Hit you with the dun-dun-dun.
Emperor Philippa Georgiou. Just being badass, like how Georgiou do. And she's like, hey, I'm here and because Starfleet sent me, because I am now Starfleet's premier security consultant. And she's like, I'm here to protect the Chancellor Hood. This woman must be Chancellor. And she talks to L'Rell alone, and she's like, here's what you got to do. Do you have the ability to kill Tyler? Because you're going to have to kill him. And she's like, absolutely not. And she's like, you got to kill that baby, too, because they're both weaknesses. And L'Rell says, I will not choose between my empire and my child. And Georgiou says, I'm not giving you a choice. Ooh, well, let's leave that plot line right there. We get back to Disco. And Tilly is being examined by Stamets, and they find out that she's hosting a parasite, a, quote, multi-dimensional fungal parasite that is, like, smart, sentient, and so they use a thing, like some kind of weird, like, tube puller, magic puller thing, and they pull the thing out of Tilly, and it's a weird, gross blob.
It's basically a futuristic mason jar.
Yeah, he takes out a mason jar with handles on either side, and he pushes a blue light into Tilly. He says, hey, this is going to sting a little bit, and they rip a giant, weird fungal blob out of her, and they put it up in the air, and they contain it in a containment field. And so while this is happening, the May vision is telling Tilly, like, you're my only chance, but Tilly's like, I'm not having it. I'm done being tortured by you. So anyway, back on Kronos, L'Rell is speaking to the assembled families, and she says, I had a baby by Voke, and but we were betrayed by Tyler. He killed the baby, and he killed all of whatever, and Kol Shah is the one who saved me when he tried to kill me. And that's why...
Long live Kol Shah!
Yeah, long live Kol Shah. He protected the Empire, and she, like, holds up Ash's head and the baby's head. And she throws Ash's head into, like, the volcano pit. And she says, well, just as Kol Shah sacrificed himself, I, too, have made sacrifices. I will give birth only once. And she says, now you are all my children, and you can call me Mother. And they'll go, yeah, in Klingon voice. That was my roar. That was my... I'm going to use that in quotable moments later. Meanwhile, there's a cloaked ship, or like a stealth ship that unstealths, and on the bridge of it is Georgiou, and she's walking... It's a duplex bridge is how I describe it. She's walking on the top part of the duplex bridge, and she walks over, and who should we see but Tyler holding a Klingon baby, and they're around the planet of Boreth, which is like a Klingon monastery planet, and so they're going to send the baby down there. The Klingon monks never leave, so the baby will be safe, but it will never meet Tyler or L'Rell ever. And Georgiou says, hey, I work for Section 31, which is like the top secret, like, CIA of the Federation, and she sort of offers him a position, sort of. She's like, hey, you should stick around. We could use people like you. And then he's like, I'll think about it, I guess. And then she walks past another guy, sort of poorly bald-shaven man, whom I don't know if we're introduced with his name here, so I shall not reveal it. But he's definitely the captain of the ship, because he's the one that tells him to go to warp after the baby is sent down to the planet. And he says, we got to work on your pitch to new recruits. And she says, don't worry, he's in. And then he just smiles grimly into the distance. And that is season 2, episode 3. I'm going to try. I'm not good at throwing the papers. Hold on. Reckless is not a thing I do either. All right. Ah! Oh, come on. Literally all just fell right back in front of me. I'm not good at throwing papers.
It's all for effect. It looked great.
Sure. I'm going to pause for coffee out of my
tea
Set
break.
Phasers
Coffee
mug.
break. If anyone wants a Set Phasers mug, you can email us at setphaserspodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, and you can get a mug. You can get a mug like mine, or a very different kind of mug that I refuse to drink out of.
Which has our faces on it.
Yes. And I can't...
It looks a little like this.
It looks
just
very
on
much
a
like
white
that.
mug without the black background.
It's very fetching. I just can't drink out of
It
my
is.
own head. It just seems too weird. It's just like,
I'm fine with it. You've seen the many photos I've been posting this week.
that's right.
So impressed with
Yeah.
my face on my mug.
You should be. I just can't be Lord Byron drinking out of a skull. All right.
Fine.
Public school. That's right. Let's let that car go by.
Is it an Obol for Charon? Did I get that right?
Okay, listen. I don't know. We can argue about this all day. Season 2, episode 4 is called An Obol for Charon. Okay? I'd rather say Karen.
Fine.
I don't remember. What's your preference? Your preference is not Sharon.
No.
Is it Charon?
Maybe Charon. Not
All right.
Sharon.
Well, it's spelled
All right,
C-H...
darling. I'll
All
have a
right,
white
darling.
wine Chardonnay.
Okay, listen. Sharon, Karen, or Charon, they're getting an Obol. Okay? And I was hoping somebody would say something. The motorcycles are out. I was hoping somebody would say Charon in the episode, but no one did.
No one does.
Alas, it's a shame. Well, episode 4 begins with someone important transporting aboard the Enterprise, and who should it be? None other than number 1. Number 1 from the Enterprise, and from these. It's anyway. I don't know how many people know the original Star Trek pilot episode with Captain Pike and his number 1, who was this sort of like completely. She is like a Spock, Kirk, McCoy combination. She's like knows everything, no nonsense, shoots from the hip, smart, but also a little ornery, kind of sidekick to the captain, and she basically runs the ship without Pike, and we get the feeling that she wouldn't need Pike to run the ship in any case. Anyway, she shows up on the Enterprise, and she's updating Pike on how the Enterprise is jacked up, and that they talk about view screens for a while, which is cute. It's like a cute little thing about how everyone else is using holograms, and he's like, I hate the holograms, and he's ripping them all out. We're going to use view screens. And she's been looking into these allegations of Spock, and apparently it's been like top level classified. Nonetheless, she's been able to get information, and he says, so how did you get it? And she's like, it's best if you don't know. So she gives him the information, and he has to go to a senior briefing, but she is left eating a hamburger with French fries with habanero sauce, and apparently going to get a milkshake later. Anyway, I love number 1, and we will see more of her in the future. But that's sort of the cold open. In the same time, in engineering, the parasite that was on Tilly is now in the chamber, the like driving chamber, and apparently they're discovering that like the mycelial network might be its home. It may not be from any place other than within the multi-dimensional mycelial network. And Tilly's sort of sad that she seems like she betrayed May, but as she has her hand on the glass, the blob like makes a hand shape that touches hers, which freaks everyone out. Mostly me. I might have.
It creeped me out. You
Yeah.
like you knew it was going to happen as soon as she put her hand on the glass. You were
I
like,
was like, something
wait
weird.
for it.
But I wasn't thinking it would be a
Wait for
hand.
it.
Ugh. Ugh. Anyway, this is why I can't watch scary movies. That scared me.
Me too. This is why you and I both watch rom-coms.
That's right, rom-coms. Okay, so the senior briefing, they're talking about the Red Angel. They're trying to figure out what is going on. We still just really don't know. And Michael says there's nothing in the universe like it. And Linus is the name of the alien who had the cold in the elevator a few episodes ago. We figure out in this episode. He sort of corrects, it's not nothing in the universe. It's nothing in the known universe that has these qualities. Saru is getting over some sort of awful cold. He calls it an acute rhinovirus. And the captain, when he comes in, tells Saru, go get some rest. You've been burning the candle at both ends. You look terrible. And Pike shares the info he's gotten about Spock from number 1, basically that they've been able to find and track the shuttlecraft that Spock stole after he escaped from Starbase 5, and Disco is on a course to intercept. And Michael asks, can I recuse myself from this? She doesn't think she should talk to Spock or be part of the mission of meeting him. And Pike basically refuses her. As they're in the middle of this conversation, however, The ship is pulled out of warp, and no one says red alert, but it's definitely a red alert kind of situation. And they rush out to the bridge, and apparently they're in some sort of multi-phasic shield or field that won't allow the ship to go to warp, and they're being held there. And as they look out the viewfinder, they see a big red spherical thing. Yeah. And then we go to credits. Okay? So, when we come back from credits, we find out this spherical thing defies all sense. Talk about known universe stuff. It is 565 kilometers in diameter, or kilometers, if you're familiar with that word. I'm not, because I'm from here. It melds both organic and non-organic matter, and it is 100,000 years old. So this thing is weird, and it's huge. It's enormous. What?
How old?
I'm sorry. How could I? And it is 100,000 years old. My apologies for not giving it the gravitas that it requires.
It was really funny because I remember watching it and thinking, they said, it's 100,000 years old. And I was like, Archie should have fun with that.
It's funny because I wrote that down specifically, but I forgot to say it like I do. And the sphere is vibrating. And as they're discussing this, Michael and Pike start speaking Klingon to each other, which is super weird. They're like, what, huh? And then as they go back onto the bridge, the whole crew is speaking different languages to each other. And it happened right after the sphere started to actually respond to their hails. We find out it's not the crew that's changed language. It's the international translator. Oh my God. The universal translator that is on the fritz. The ship is getting all weird and tricky. And since everyone's speaking a bunch of different languages and they got a virtual Tower of Babel there on the bridge, Michael calls down to Saru, who, as we may remember from past episodes, knows 97 different Federation languages. He is still sick, but he shows up and he knows the languages and is able to work out that there is a virus in the comms and in the system that is messing with the translator. He's able to get the universal translator working on the bridge, but not in other parts of the ship. And so people need to go check things out. And he goes with Michael, even though he's still sick, because he's the only one who could really help. She'll need a translator. Engineering, the lab, is unaffected. And so Pike says, hey, bring the spore drive online because warp is not working and this weird big sphere has got us in some kind of multiphasic field. And so they're about to do that. That is when Jet Reno, played by Tig Notaro, shows up, and she's like, hey, I gotta work out some conduit bibbly bobbly. She does some Star Trek jargon speak, and she and Stamets go at it. Stamets does not like her, and she does not like Stamets. But it's not personal, it's what they do, but it turns into a personal thing because she is sort of an engineer and he feels that he is sort of a high-minded scientist, and they get into it about antimatter versus other matter. I don't want to go into it here. I mean, I do, but we don't have time. Anyway, Stamets thinks he's getting the better of Jet Reno, and Jet Reno says, hey, I'm uninsultable. You cannot hurt my feelings. And he tries, and then she slams Stamets with a stinger. Hit me with a stinger.
Yes!
Ooh, that stings. Yeah, she's like, hey, I can fix things with like gum and
duct tape.
And Stamets is like, well,
Stamets has met his match.
Stamets, he has been bested. Well, she's unaffected. And she's there to set up a firewall in the lab so that the lab doesn't get affected by the virus that's going on through the ship. And Reno just goes back to work. Saru and Michael manage to fix the universal translator throughout the ship. But just as they're about to do that, Saru collapses and he's like, it's not just a cold. And when they're about to talk about that, boom, there's a weird power surge on the ship. And doors get shut and things get messed up and the EPS conduits are overloading and the virus is spreading through other systems in the ship. So now engineering is sealed off, and also there's like electrically charged energy moving through the walls or the air or something. And so now Reno, Stamets, and Tilly are trapped in there with all this power. And so they're like, we got to figure out a way to get this electricity out of the air because it could our oxygen could ignite and it could kill us all. She says something very Reno-esque, like if our oxygen goes up, we'll be cooked faster than French fries in a French fryer or something like that. They managed to uh, funnel together some of the spore tubes because it's can cause electricity to travel through them, and they're going to use the bulkhead as like a lightning rod to get all the lightning out of the air. Anyway, it works. They teamwork. They do it together. It's great. But the like lightning moving through the room causes them all to pass out briefly. When they come around, the spore is no longer in the chamber. And as they turn around to figure out, where is it? It gloms onto Tilly's arm. Back on Tilly. Okay, so while they're dealing with that, Michael is taking Saru to sickbay, and Saru is pretty upset. He doesn't want to talk about things. He wants to help fix the ship. Pike shows up, and they're talking about it, and he says, listen, okay, I lied to you. It's not a cold. It's a condition called the Va-Harai, and it is a condition that is unique to Kelpians, and it's terminal. There is no way not to die from it. Apparently, they're on their planet of Kaminar. They share the planet with the Ba'ul, who are the predator species of the homeworld, and they are sort of the prey species. And when they enter the Va-Harai, it is how they know, it is a biological indicator that the Kelpians are ready to be, quote, culled by the Ba'ul. And their ganglia become inflamed, and they're under extreme duress and pain, and apparently either they die from it or they are driven mad by the symptoms of it, the pain and the information. So that's pretty sad, and everyone's really torn up about it. Meanwhile, back in the lab, they're trying to free Tilly from the parasite, and Tilly is in the like sort of isolation chamber, and apparently the parasite slash mushroom is sending psilocybin into Tilly, and so she is tripping hard. She's like half awake, half asleep, half talking, half dreaming. Meanwhile, on sickbay, they figure out that maybe the spear triggered the Va-Harai, but they're not exactly sure how, and the virus is starting to destroy the ship, and life support is going down, and Saru thinks that they could develop a defense, a sort of like counter virus that will allow them to slow the virus down. And even though he's like on his last legs and could be dying soon, he's like, I'm maybe dying, but I am not dead. And so he and Michael will go and try to put together this counter virus. And so they're in the room working on the counter virus, and they figure it out, and it's slowly holding at bay the virus that's moving through all their systems. And Michael and Saru talk, and Saru sort of admits that he'd never told Michael about the Va-Harai because he didn't want to show weakness to someone who was close to him and had been fighting there for so long for her next breath to remain alive, and his species all about the surrender to the Va-Harai. And he asked Michael, he says, listen, I'm going to die. I've made precise logs, personal logs of my time on Starfleet, and I'd love for you to catalog them when I'm gone so that the Kelpians are no longer under General Order 1. And Saru could never return home for that reason. Also, at this time, he mentions offhand for the second time that he keeps seeing weird ultraviolet flashes because the Kelpians can see in other ranges of light than humans. And then we go to the bridge, and they are trying to disrupt the field because the counterviruses work well enough that they're able to bring shields up, but they are not able to do that, and they're about to lose Spock on their long-range sensors. And so Michael goes to engineering to see if she can help with getting the spore drive online, some way that they can get out of there. In the lab, when Michael gets there, Tilly is still in trouble. She's still freaking out, and they're trying to come up with ideas. Michael's unable to get into the lab because it's sealed off because of the power surges, but as they're trying to figure out a way to get to speak to this parasite, Stamets says, we can use this harmonic interface. Will allow us to speak to the parasite, figure out what it wants so that we can maybe negotiate with it. And that gives Michael a brilliant idea. So Stamets is going to work on Tilly with the harmonic interface, and Michael runs back to Saru, and she's like, maybe we need to maybe it's a language, maybe it's trying to speak to us through the virus. And Saru goes, of course, I've been a fool. These ultraviolet patterns, they're repeating. It's like a language. It's trying to speak to us. This is not first contact. This is last contact. This thing is alive, this sphere, and it's dying, and it's trying to communicate with us before it dies. That's what he says. Meanwhile, back in the lab with Tilly, they're not able to get the harmonic interface to work. And in order to get it to work, there are theories that they need to boost it with cortical implants. However, they do not have laser scalpels and all that stuff, and they're stuck in the lab. And so they're gonna have to literally drill into Tilly's skull and place the implant in there. What the what? So
Does not sound like fun.
it doesn't sound like fun. It doesn't look like fun when it happened. And well,
This
it
was a
causes,
sweet moment, though.
it is a super sweet moment. We're gonna get there. We're not quite there
Sorry.
yet. Because back on the bridge, the sphere's temperature is spiking internally, and it's about to explode. And so Pike is preparing to fire on the sphere, and because it looks like it's going to attack them. But Saru and Michael manage to interrupt, and they communicate that the sphere is dying, and they say the sphere is trying to share something before it dies. It's trying to remember, trying to share its story, but its knowledge could be so fast, so its knowledge. I'm so excited because I'm such a nerd. Slow down, Burmese. Its knowledge is so vast that it is overpowering Discovery's computers, and that in order to get all the information from it, they have to let down their shields and let the sphere speak computer to computer. In the lab, we're about to do the procedure on Tilly. She's on like a standing operation table, and Stamets walks over and says, "Hey, sing your favorite song." And Tilly starts singing Space Oddity, and Stamets starts singing with her. And as they're singing along, he drills into her head. And then Reno, matter of factly, kind of just walks over and places a cortical implant in her. But they are able to speak to May, and May says she is from a species called the Jasep, and they lived inside the mycelial network. But then their ecosystem, their home, was being destroyed by an alien intruder who was ravaging it. And they wonder who it is, and May says it was Stamets, it was the Discovery, it was the jumps. And he says, "I'll do anything I can to repair it. Just let Tilly go." And May, through Tilly, talking through the cortical implants and the harmonic interface, says, "No, I have other plans for Tilly," and breaks three of the restraints. And then the weird thing starts to swallow Tilly whole and creates a cocoon of around Tilly on the floor. On the bridge, the sphere is approaching solar temperatures, getting very dangerous. So Pike says, "Okay, let's give your idea a plan." He says, "I'm going to lower the shields," but he tells Detmer, "Prepare to eject the core and send it towards the thing, which will destroy it, and then we'll have to ride the shockwave of the explosion away as quickly as we can to try and stay alive." Because at this point, they've got nothing left, and they've lost Spock altogether. And when they let down the shields, transmission does indeed happen. And once the transmission is complete, the sphere does explode. Boom! But the sphere, in its last nanosecond of existence, after sending all that information over to the disco, reversed the polarity on its multiphasic field and pushed disco just outside of the range of the explosion. It saved them with its last act. In the lab, Stamets and Reno are able to cut Tilly out of the cocoon, and she's pretty freaked out. And they're pretty high because there's spores in the room, and Tilly's seeing things, but they don't see that. Anyway, on the bridge, Saru is still dying, and so he asks Michaels to take him to his quarters, and the crew does a really solemn, they all stand out of respect for him as he's leaving, being carried out. And we get to Saru's quarters, which is one of the coolest sort of scenes, I thought, on the ship. He has this beautiful quarters that everything's covered in grass, and he sleeps on a grass bed, and he's got all these beautiful flowers, and he's telling Michael, "I brought these seeds from Kaminar." I don't really have it. You know what I was thinking of earlier? Just a quick timeout. I think I was thinking Kolinar, which is the Vulcan, logic
Yep.
procedure. Yeah.
Yep.
That's what it was. Not Worf. Anyway, so he's got all these seeds that he brought with him from Kaminar, and he's basically created a beautiful garden across his entire place, and he's lying down on his bed, and he's talking to Michael, and he tells Michael, "Get the knife out of the drawer. It's a Kelpian knife, and here's what you have to do. You have to cut off my ganglia, killing me so that you can spare me of any more pain and prevent me from going mad." and it's pretty hard. Michael starts crying, and they share that they both view each other as family, and he says that she. Are you hearing all that? Should I pause?
That's right.
All right. Well, he says that she replaced his sister Serana for him in his life, that she left back on the planet, that he was never able to say goodbye to, and so he tells Michael to promise him that if she's given the chance, she will find a way to repair her relationship with Spock. They say a final tearful goodbye to each other, and as Michael lifts the knife to Saru's ganglia, they fall off. And he's not dead. And they're like, what the what? Well, Saru, after the ganglia fall out, he's like his vitals have gone back to normal, but he's no longer crippled by this sort of fear. In fact, he says he feels a kind of power, and the doctor certifies him for duty. He's fine. And the reports coming in from the science team report that they got all this crazy information from the sphere. It's not just languages, it's everything the sphere has encountered in 100,000 years. Did I do it right? Okay. And so it's a revelation. But Saru mentions that it's also a troubling revelation, for on the planet Kaminar, the Kelpians believe in this. Oh no, I forgot the word for the thing that happens. Vahari. The Kelpians believe in this Vahari. They surrender to it. They believe in this cycle of death, and that the Ba'ul then are able to prey on them. They call it the Great Balance, and it turns out it's false, because he did not die in the Vahari. And this relationship between the Kelpians and Ba'ul is wrong, and so he questions whether or not to continue to obey General Order 1. And it's just a big question for the future of the Kelpian people and the planet in general. In the Red Room, Michael shows up, and Pike is sort of listening to some of the stuff from the sphere. He calls them the Dead Sea Scrolls. And what they realize is that the last thing the sphere encountered was Spock flying past it. So now they have a beat on Spock. And that's when Pike says your favorite thing that I didn't write down, and I'm so sorry, where he says, set a course and don't spare the horses, which is just so cowboy.
It's almost Kirkian.
It's almost Kirkian, but not quite, not all the way Kirk. But yeah, he doesn't mention poker at the same time. So he's like, you know what, I was thinking about what you were saying, Michael, and if we run into Spock, I'll keep your praise, but I don't want to force you to meet him. And she says, you know what, I've actually had a change of heart, because I talked to my friend Saru, who was basically dying, and I've decided if we're going to save Spock, I'm going to be part of it, no matter how hard it is, no matter how difficult it gets. I'm going to help to save Spock. Meanwhile, in the lab, Tilly is seeing all these spores coming out of the weird cocoon that's still on the floor that she was just cut out of, and Reno and Stamets are completely high. They are talking about each other's harmonic auras, and they realize they've been dosed. They've been dosed by the multiphasic spore thing. So they're both high. And so Stamets has Reno slap him so that he can remember, and he gets like an antidote to the high thing. And when they both are sort of back to being somewhat sober, they're like, now we got to get to Tilly. And as they look around, Tilly's gone. She gone.
She
and
gone.
As they look inside the cocoon, they cut open the cocoon, and the cocoon is empty. Here endeth episode 4 of season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. And Obol for Charon. Charon.
Charon.
Charon.
Changes. Charon.
How do you like me now? I threw those papers.
Yes, you did, convincingly.
I sure did.
That was brilliant.
You know what I realized? Is it time for stats? I think it's time for stats.
I think it is time for stats.
Set phasers to stats.
There was only one yellow alert announced in this. I think there were definitely a couple of red alerts, but they were never like announced as red alerts. But I also realized we really should have been keeping in our stats the number of times we hear Klingon Makta Zhuzh.
Yeah.
Because I think we might have heard it for the last time here. But there was one Klingon Makta. Excuse me. There was one Klingon Makta Zhuzh in episode 3. And if we never hear it again, I will be truly, truly sad. But fortunately, I know how to say it, and I can say it to myself. And to you, Steph. And
Thank
to you,
you.
listener. I'm sorry. I have no control. Quotable moments?
Yes, let's. Quotable moments.
Have you got anything?
Well, you said mine earlier, and mine was set a course. Don't spare the horses.
That's right. Well, okay, so the one I chose was from episode 3. It's Laurel when she's telling the whole fiction about the baby and Ash Tyler. But I love it when she says, I will only have a bear child once. She says, now you are my children as I raise this family to greatness. Do not refer to me as Chancellor, for I deserve a fiercer title. From this point forth, you may call me Mother. I kind of want to like just a huge power cord on electric guitar when she says it.
Like 80s power chord.
Yeah.
Boom.
Well, listen, I don't want to get on a high horse here because we're about to say goodbye, but I think it's time for a quick Klopla corner.
You think, do you?
Okay, listen up, people. I get a lot of pushback on Discovery, and I like to go to the mattresses for Discovery. People tell me, listen, Discovery's fine, it looks good, and the characters are great, but the plots are too one note. There's no subplots. It's not like the original Star Trek. There's not a lot. There's just one story, and they go through it the whole time. Well, listen up, people. Did you not just hear me try to review these last 2 episodes? Not only was there, like, the Klingon fight for control, there was Tilly's thing with the parasite. There was the sphere. There was Amanda showing up, and where is Spock? I mean, there's like a billion things going on at once. There's like 4 plot lines. So if your argument has been that Discovery is a subpar Star Trek because it doesn't have multiple plot lines, then either you're lying or you ain't listening. Kapla.
Kapla. Indeed. Oh.
Kapla. Thank you. I just had to get them up. I had to get that off my chest. Are we ready?
Rightly so.
Yes, yeah. I have things to say. I'm going to say more stuff. We thought Kapla Corner was over, but no. I got a head full of steam. I'm not going to spare the horses. Okay. What I mean to use
Next time on Set Phasers.
Yes, next time on Set Phasers, we will be discussing episodes 5 and 6, which are named respectively Saints of Imperfection and Sounds of Thunder. And they both are very interesting episodes if their names are interesting in and of themselves.
Indeed, they are.
Yes, tune in next Friday for a future installment of Set Phasers in which we discuss those episodes. And we're crushing through Season 2 as we continue on our accelerated pace so that we can be on target for mid-October when Season 3 begins.
4 weeks left.
4 weeks left. Too many episodes left. Okay, well, listen. If you've enjoyed what you've been hearing, thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed the program, you can catch us every Friday at 8 p.m. on Facebook Live or as a podcast every Monday, wherever podcasts come from. And if you are getting them as podcasts, please rate and subscribe us.
We are on Facebook and Instagram at Set Phasers Podcast. Feel free to follow us and join in the conversation of all things Trek and tell your friends.
Yes, and if you want to support our continuing mission to discover what Discovery has in store for us, we'd only be delighted. You can patronize us, we can take it, by going to patreon.com/setphasers.
Until next time, I'm Steph Mans.
And I am Aki Burmese, and this has been Set Phasers, a highly illogical Star Trek podcast.
Computer. End program.